So that's what I'm saying. The text is like an object. It's gonna change perspective based on where you're standing.
I don't know.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I missed you, baby sweet. It was a day.
It was a day.
Please tell me you're seeing this too.
From Seattle, we're Drinking the Movies. I'm Taylor Baker.
And I'm Michael Clausen. That is terrible. Yo.
That is some smooth whiskey.
There you go. What kind of whiskey are you drinking?
I'm drinking some Bushmills whiskey. You're drinking the last bits of your Corona. And we are about to talk about some first impressions and then dig into some foreign films.
As we do.
As we do.
What are we doing first impressions of today?
We've got Varda by Agnes, and then we have Synonyms.
What are we doing first?
Varda, of course.
Let's do it.
In memory of her.
Varda's number one.
Je voulais faire un film sur ces jeunes qui n'ont pas de toit et qui n'aiment pas la loi. Je voulais filmer ce que veut dire liberté et saleté et raconter une fille jeune qui fait la route. Et c'est là que j'ai écrit le film Sans toi ni loi.
So I guess that was a clip, not a trailer. I'll repeat for the audience. This is an interesting way to start an episode that is going to be mostly about nihilism. Because you and I are just beaming with how lovely this woman is and how fantastic it is to hear her talk about her cinema.
It's pretty irresistible, right? What's better than watching one of her movies is her just kind of walking you through her movies. Yeah, I
feel like she was hugging me.
It's pretty incredible. Just a couple minutes, just lovely. What can you say that hasn't already been said? She's just charming as hell. I
love the artistic flourishes that were even seen in the documentary, though, because she's on that tracking shot, and then there's a real tripod, but then on top of the tripod is a 2D like cardboard cutout, black and white. It looks like of a camera, like a classic camera, and it's just, it's great. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, definitely. One to pair with a Varda 1, 2, or 3 of hers, perhaps. We can watch them, and then she can tell us all about them.
Or maybe we'll watch them first or afterward.
Yeah.
And then you watch this for Doc Talk.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then, do you want to know how the sausage was made first, or do you want to?
I usually prefer to watch the thing itself first, and then find out how it was made. You? It's not a hard and fast rule, but
I actually do like to know what I'm looking at before I watch it so that I can have a heightened appreciation of it. Yeah. Because just logistically, it's so hard for me to watch these films twice because there are so, like, by the time we're at summer, we're going to have that 2-month window where it's going to slow down for a bit. Then we're going to get back in this, 6-month track where everything comes out at once.
Busy fall.
And
always.
We're just not going to be able to watch the movie, watch the documentary, and then rewatch the movie.
True.
So I do like to, especially with the dead artist, appreciate the sausage more.
There you go. We can come from different angles.
Can. On to Synonyms.
Let's check it out.
Is it she? Is it she?
Je ne veux pas travailler.
Je suis arrivé en France pour fuir Israël.
All right. We just watched the trailer for Synonyms. What'd you think?
Well, since there were no subtitles, I think it looks visually interesting. It appears to be about the army, about a Jewish man acclimating to Europe, and about, the Jewish customs and their way of thinking, whether that's backwards or not, in play in Europe. At one point, it appears that his friend says that all women in France are vipers. I don't know if you picked up on that, but I certainly did.
Very nice.
So definitely textually rich. Synonyms seems like the name of the game here. There's a lot that is probably being explored about faith and religion and about the nation of state and the nation of duty.
Yeah, I think this is a first for us, doing a first impression in entirely a foreign language.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I was kind of just gravitating towards the tone, focused on that, which is kind of interesting. The music definitely gave it kind of a upbeat, buoyant, kind of whimsical feeling, even though the subject matter is clearly, somewhat serious. So I'm interested to see how that, somewhat light tone kind of leads us into that material.
Well, I think that light tone will allow us to get into that deep material.
Yeah. It's not, it's inviting in a way. Yeah.
Which is, as good of a lead-in as we'll get for some very nihilistic films from China this week. We are starting with Ash's Purest White, then we'll get into Long Day's Journey into Night, and then we will talk about An Elephant Sitting Still. Let's get pure white with some ash.
So pure.
经过高温燃烧，夜灰不就是最干净的？
So you finished this less than 4 hours ago?
You were sitting with me.
This is hot off the press.
Hot off the press.
I saw it about a week ago. So we have different gestation periods. That's the word.
Certainly. But this is a film I do not need to gestate on.
Oh, done.
Lukewarm, not negative.
Got it. I loved it. I thought it was fascinating, gorgeous. Left me with lots to chew on. Moved from start to finish, particularly in the second half.
We've talked about how I really do not care for these pop music things that pop up in these Chinese films that we've been watching. And it pulls me out of it. I find it very abrasive. And I did feel like it was kind of holding me back from really getting to know what was going on with her specifically and her emotions. Like, I understand she's a very withdrawn character. Maybe that's a good tie-in to that first impression we just did on Varda, where she's kind of explaining to the actress, or they're talking about her previous role and how they didn't talk about who she was, but how she'd behave. And I don't feel like I really know who that woman is by the end of Ash's Purest White. I do find some very rich themes throughout reflecting that title, though.
That's interesting. I think I had maybe I would say the reverse, where I was never quite sure what to do with that metaphor for Ash's Purest White and what they have the conversation about in the kind of landscape scene with the volcano in the background. I chewed on that for a bit. I never was able to map it onto the narrative in a super clean way. But I alternatively was super involved with her. I was devastated at times, particularly when they first, I think the characters' names are Bin and Chow, when they first reconnect after their first kind of separation and they're in the hotel room. She's, taking the ferry after coming out of prison, tries to track him down. She realizes he's with someone new, and ultimately she finds him and they're in that hotel room. And it's their first kind of reconnection after this long separation.
5 years.
Prior to which they were a couple. And her starting to cry towards the end of that scene and turning away from the camera. That was a wallop for me. I love the way that it lets her turn away from the camera and have that moment. Sometimes more conventional drama can, shove that emotion in your face. I think that's something that's really special about this film is knowing when to share a character's reaction with us versus when to give them a moment of privacy. I love that kind of empathetic gesture through the movie. I was super involved with her.
Do you feel like you know who she is?
I don't know that I would say I've very much empathized with her. I've very much understood her story, and yet found her to be a very complicated character. So I wouldn't say that I know who she is, and that's a good thing. Like, that's what makes me want to like go see this movie again, is just to better understand like all that is who she is. But didn't get there, right?
I did not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I think the narrative itself between them is very sort of interestingly steeped in how, you know, their country is changing at the time. You know, the idea that the boyfriend Ben is this aging gangster whose ways are sort of threatened by like younger generation.
Was it Jing-Yu?
Right. Yeah, I think that's the name of the gang or
I looked it up,
crime circle or something.
Well, when I looked it up, it was basically like the title for someone who's like a power figure in a triad.
Ah, got it.
That might not be a 1-to-1 translation. That's just what Google said. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I found it fascinating to read it as a story about them, first as a couple in their evolving relationship, but also about this kind of generational change, and like it plays out in this, you know, genre of the gangster film where his ways are kind of being toppled by this, you know, these this younger generation that we see quite violently react to him at some point, and the way that just is kind of paralleling the transformation of their the cities in which they grew up and are living, and China's kind of transformation. I think that's fascinating. It's not something that like I don't understand like to any great extent. Like, I'm no expert or well read at all in like China over the past
scholar?
2 decades. No, not at all.
Really?
But it's the kind of film that like that really encouraged me to want to know more, because I just found the symmetry kind of fascinating and not like too heady. I was also like super moved.
So you don't feel like all that stuff you just described are pieces of some metaphorically rich tapestry for this idea of Ashes Purest White? You're talking about this volcano in the background, and right, the statement that Ashes Purest White means a volcanic eruption that blows things up and melts things completely is the purest form of white. And you're talking about this very slow, brutal change that is maybe impure. And then their experiences as characters were very reminiscent of this volcanic idea where like they just explode, the gun explodes, they go to jail, they're completely separated. It's basically like a pure start over. She comes back to him and it's just like totally different, and she has to adapt to that. And then doesn't he go back to jail and then he has to like readapt to the world after that? Or does he get shot?
Yeah, I forget actually how he ends up in the wheelchair eventually. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I see what you're saying. It is definitely not something like I didn't like. I'm not quite sure, like, in that metaphor, like, who is the Ash? Like, are these characters the Ash? Is it just that this turning point is like an explosion?
Is the volcano the Ash? Is the Ash the volcano? Is the lava the volcano? Like, what is? I think that's the point. Like, to think about it like that. And I think that there's also the ferry, right? She's on the ferry and they're talking about how they're building this dam, and basically everything you see is going to be underwater, right? And so that's the idea of rebirth as well, because right, ash has this rebirth thing to it. It's one of the richest minerals for growing new life. So anywhere that there's like a forest fire or a volcanic eruption, within 20 years you'll see new growth.
I don't doubt by any means that like there is a more precise, or there is a precise sort of mapping of the metaphor that you're describing. I just didn't really get a grasp of it in the moment. I was
you weren't
leaning
latching
into
on
other
from
things.
there.
That wasn't really my
leaning into the
springboard.
character, yeah.
Yeah.
I think just as someone that leans more narrative, I'm just going to go towards their metaphors, because metaphors speak to the narrative, allegories, and all that stuff. And I found the character very walled off.
Yeah. That's just fascinating. I mean, the look on her face when she's talking to Bin's new girlfriend. They might be married at the time. That's one time we are strictly
right.
watching her face.
The moments you've brought up are like emotionally rich moments.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what I would say is that leading into those moments, I did not feel like I knew her. So I do feel like I'm watching a stranger have very profound emotional moments, but I don't feel like I know her.
Yeah, interesting.
Like I don't know who she is in that jail. Like I don't know. I know that she likes to be in power, but like I don't really know who she is. Like I don't know what drives her. I don't know what she loves. I don't know anything about her deeper self, I would say. And maybe, the argument is you're slowly being exposed to her deeper self, and so is she through those scenes that you're bringing up. Maybe I just have an emotional separation. Like that's just maybe not what I like. Hard for me to say.
I don't know. I mean, for me, it's partly the performance. Like I think the actress just brought like immense gravity to the character. I just never doubted for a second that she didn't feel anything other than what her face was telling me she was feeling, whether that was utter sadness over the realization that this is never kind of going to be what it was between them, whether it's incredible anger tied in with fear as she steps out of the car with the gun. I thought that was a fantastic scene. Like I love this movie is kind of open to its leaning into the gangster genre. It gives us that line, you've seen too many gangster movies. It's willing to recognize that that's exactly the scaffolding that this is all laid on, is a gangster narrative. But also thought it was interesting, Sean Baker, as he usually does, make astute observations, compared it to Cold War. We're just talking a lot about Cold War today, and how some of those leaps in time, and how the romance between these two characters are really kind of inextricably linked to what the film's also interested in at sort of like the national level, which I think is just really interesting.
Yeah, maybe that's a good segue to talk about maybe what so we've only watched the first two as of now. We're going to watch An Elephant Sitting Still and stitch that into the episode next weekend.
Correct.
But so far, these two Chinese films we've watched do seem to be making overt statements about the nature of a country like China, and the ability to make their, if you want to call them complaints, or just statements about how they feel about politics, and how you have to toe a line in order to get that work outside the country. And seen it all. Did you have any experiences while watching it, or in reflection about how it's tackling China?
You're asking what I think this movie has to say about China?
Yeah, contemporary China.
I found it most just interested in what it feels like for a person to experience this period of change in China. I don't find it to be making criticisms of China, or perhaps I just don't understand like the economic and political change over the past 2 decades to really articulate what I think this might criticize or anything like that. I find it more just about what it's like as a person to live through a period of change, and it attaches that to a couple going through an interpersonal change, as his his sense of purpose and who he was totally wrapped up in being this leader of the Jiangsu, and that being completely torn apart and having to kind of find a new direction for himself, and that sort of being something that he just can't do.
As illustrated by the appetizer plates.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's, for me, in some way, I don't think this is going to sound super vague, but to me, because it's about what it feels like to live through a period of change, it's partly about kind of finding like new things to believe in, which is why I really kind of like the second half of the movie, when it suddenly becomes kind of epic and expansive, and you get that kind of like magical realist scene where she sees the like shooting star or UFO. I don't know. To me, there's some idea there about finding something new to believe in, to consider new possibilities, that I just found really moving. But what about you? Did you feel it saying something about China?
I did, but I also I would say think that it's gonna make, like, when I watch a film from Turkey or Syria or the Middle East or China, or any Asian country that is going through upheaval, or political turmoil, from religious structures or socialist structures, I'm always going to consider their statements, especially Russian films. Contemporarily, Loveless, I thought, was very, very rich in its statements about Russia as a country, by using the city lights and its glasswork. And I found, like, if you take that classic Roman idea of breads and circuses, right, we're watching these people scarf down noodles at buffets and banquets and celebrate weddings and go to these Chinese pop karaoke things and play, what's that game called? The tile
Mahjong?
game that they play. Mahjong. Right, so that's kind of their circuses and their breads. So it feels like China is just kind of obsessed with keeping its or not obsessed, but its goal is to keep its people occupied and fed, it seems, while it tries to steer its ship. And we see that they're closing this town that her father owns the coal mine in. And I feel like, based on that setting, like, you have to acknowledge that, like, old China's dying and it's steering towards a new China, and they're kind of raising the tide.
Yeah.
And what came before is going to be beneath the water now, kind of like the fairy says. And there's two moments, I thought, that really illustrate what maybe the difficulties are of this contemporary China. She lies to get into the office after she sticks the water bottle through the door.
Yeah.
Correct. Shoot, maybe that's not the scene. Maybe I'm superimposing the scenes, but there's a scene where, maybe it's on the train, I can't remember. There's a scene where someone says something about the, so it would have been a tile scene or a mahjong scene, and someone says that the coal mine is going to be closing, and she says, no, it's not, and they say, yes, it is, and basically, and then she says, no, it's not. Where'd you hear that from? And they say, I heard it on the internet. So if it's on the internet, it must be true, right? And that is not a statement that is true in most of the rest of the world. But in China, because it is a state-ran thing where you can't put something that the state does not approve of, that is this weird thing where it's like, well, is that worse than ours? Because, right, like, for us, oh, it's on the internet, it must be fake. In China, oh, it's on the internet, it must be true. It's a very, I think, contemporarily rich idea. And I don't think that it's really a criticism so much as just a flat statement about contemporary China.
Yeah.
And then the other one is when she's on the train and they meet the UFO fellow. And the man next to him that keeps asking the questions asks, so is this a state operation? And he says, no, it doesn't matter. And the other man kind of scoffs. And it very much shows that your business will succeed if the state is involved, and your business won't succeed if the state isn't involved. And the state is pulling out of the coal mining town that her father owns the coal mine. So I feel like there is a conversation happening about Chinese business and its dependency on its state and how its state controls everything. Like, it is not a free market. It is a controlled market by the state. And that might be good. It might be bad. It's hard to say.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's all like fascinating stuff. That enriches it for me, for sure.
Yeah, that was definitely the stuff that I liked.
Okay, gotcha.
And it was her character work, not her character work, because that sounds... There's something about the screenplay not letting me know who she is. I don't feel like I know any of her secrets. I feel like anything that I know about her, I saw, and maybe that's great. And I just I didn't appreciate it this time around. But I want to know, like, what keeps her up at night. I want to know what she loves. I want to know what her favorite type of dog is. Like, there's just, you know what I mean? Like, there's a mushy gushiness to her character that I don't feel like I know.
I guess I would say she loves Ben. I mean, it's partly a tragic romance.
That seems to be her actions, but I didn't get the sense that she was head over heels, violently in love, the way that I did in Cold War.
I agree. That is a much more volcanic kind of relationship, I think, which is ironic because this is the one with the volcano metaphor.
It is.
Not to go.
I was thinking that as well.
Oh, the volcano really belongs in Cold War. Ah, there we go.
Got it.
They got a chat.
Both have minds.
Whoa, dark stuff. Yeah. The relationship in Ashes Spears White is certainly a bit quieter, perhaps. But that's kind of exactly what I like about it. I mean, I just think scene to scene, I can't take my eyes off the people. I respond to the shooting style where there isn't a ton of cutting, like the scene we just watched towards the end in the Mahjong Parlor again. One take, just drifting back and forth between the characters. I like how that just lets me sort of walk into the scene. I think it's partly just through the style that I really felt like I was becoming involved with these characters, at the same time that I'm also getting the opportunity to kind of explore this reflection of China over this period.
I think I'm just greedy and I want more.
It's fair.
That's what this conversation's led me to believe about Chinese cinema, almost. Like, I'm just greedy and I want, like, more through lines. I want to know more who the character is. Like, I want to know that is that character, and I want to know why they're that character more.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I need to watch some Chinese limited series to, like, really steep myself in, like, Chinese culture so that when I watch these films, they feel more accessible to me. Because I do feel like they're kind of holding me at bay the way that Black Mother held me at bay. Like, there is in Parks and Recreation, there is a episode about Leslie Knope being painted nude as the hunter.
I don't think I've seen this.
And the Cupid is painted as Aziz Ansari. And basically the religious group in Pawnee tries to get the portrait taken away. And basically it all leads to this conversation where Leslie quotes someone who I don't remember. And this quote is, pornography is hard to define, but when I know it, or when I see it, I know it. And I think that that's very true about foreign films, because Cold War doesn't feel foreign. Transit did not feel foreign. But Black Mother felt foreign, even though it was in English language. I did feel like it was a foreign film that I was watching. And these Chinese films do definitely feel foreign to me. Like, I feel like I don't quite know how to unlock them. And so I think that quote, it kind of applies here where, like, I don't think that foreign film as it's defined is really foreign. Like, Roma doesn't feel foreign to me.
Yeah.
An Irish film, is that foreign? Like, how do we define these foreign films?
Yeah. I don't know that, like, that's always kind of, I think I agree with what you're saying. I think it's always kind of frustrated to me to even think of it as a category, that we have, like, cinema, which is American cinema, and then everything else, which we call world cinema, which is usually relegated to like one carousel at the bottom of whatever app you use.
Yeah.
To me, it's just like I remember Peter Bogdanovich saying, there's no old movies, there's no new movies, there's just the ones you've seen and the ones you haven't. And I think of
I would agree.
national cinema the same way. Like, yes, we live in America, but movies are movies.
And I think the internet and Netflix has really changed things where, like, when I watch a French film, most often I don't feel like it's foreign. When I watch a Mexican film, I don't feel like it's foreign. Canadian, I don't feel like it's foreign. If I were to watch a Native American film in all Native American language, I could not call that foreign because that would be the most American it could be. So, like, I feel like this definition breaks down, and but there is a truth to things feeling foreign to us, and I think that my own boundary might be with Chinese films. And even Russian films, kind of like the North Asian films, I feel like I don't really have an access into, because I very much dig Japanese and Korean films, South Korean films, and totally like vibe with them and understand them. You know, The Handmaiden's like one of my favorite movies of all time. I love Okja, Snowpiercer. I mean, that's an American film, quote unquote, but it's from a South Korean filmmaker. It's very weird, but I do think there's almost a visual language to these Chinese films that we're going to talk about that I'm not entirely acclimated to, and they feel extra foreign to me, whereas Rome and Cold War did not feel foreign.
I mean, I think it's hard to say, right? I mean, I think I won't put words in your mouth, but I would guess we both have seen a relatively small number of Chinese films in total.
Yes.
Relative to any other nation. I know I haven't.
I've definitely seen much more Japanese films, whether it's manga or live action Godzilla films when I was younger, versus Chinese films. Yeah.
So to me, it does make it harder to say, like, is it possible we don't like it because, or you don't like it because it's Chinese, or is it just that
it's you just don't like it? It's just that I don't really know how to watch it, if that makes sense. Because I definitely I definitely don't dislike this movie. I'm very lukewarm on it. I'm very in the middle. It's kind of like Shoplifters, but lacks the emotional sincerity that I can map onto. It doesn't lack the emotional sincerity. It lacks the emotional sincerity that I'm capable of latching onto. Yeah. You know, it's like what's that thing that I was watching? There's this new Netflix show where like the baby won't latch onto the nipple, and it's like I just can't latch onto this nipple. Yeah. I need to learn how.
Love it. That is great. Can you put that in the review?
I will.
I guess my only counter argument would be that I do feel like style can be universal, and there are things here that
I would agree, but I'm not a visual intaker the way that you are. I think I'm more narrative based. So there is something about the Chinese narrative that is very dependent on omens and on keystones of storytelling over time that I find exhaustive and annoying, honestly, in the Western canon. But maybe it has a beauty in the Eastern canon that I kind of have a wall built up to that I need to break down.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you responded to this, or not this one, but Cold War. What do you think it was about Cold War?
Cinematography and emotions visibly that I can map onto and relate with.
Oh, see, I had that here. That's crazy. You're not crazy. The difference is crazy.
No, I'm crazy. It's cool.
I mean, I don't know. I felt like there was a language here that a person anywhere in the world could identify with. Like, I remember...
I would agree, there's moments, but I feel like at the end of it, I don't entirely know who they are. And I feel like at the end of Cold War, I knew who Joanna and... I can't remember who the male actor's name is.
I've definitely spent more time thinking about her after the fact than him, unfortunately.
I feel like I knew who they were. Like, I know what that type of love is better Maybe that's my own personal experiences. And I don't feel like I really understand this business relationship that she feels deeply emotionally and he feels maybe like I have a question about whether or not Ben even feels it or if he just likes the stability that she provides him with.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is the more opaque one, right? Like, I think we see her emote more visibly, and then especially it's like there's sort of this like emptying of like emotion from him after this sort of cataclysmic event happens, and he doesn't know how to move forward. And I could understand.
Literally can't move forward without help.
Yeah,
her help, right, in the wheelchair.
Yeah, but for me, it's like him becoming so walled off was like the idea of the narrative is like I think she wants, like she can't help but want to connect, and like I don't think he is anywhere in a place where he can even be open to that kind of relationship again.
That's interesting. Do you think there's a correlation between like the dam symbolism of the dams and him building up walls?
That's great. That's great connection. So yeah, I mean, I think he's maybe the harder one to, immediately involve yourself with. Yeah. I don't know. We just split. That happens.
And I don't think I'm right. I just think that...
Oh, I know you're wrong.
I think that if I said anything else than what I've said, I would be lying. That's all I can say.
There you go. Just gotta say how you feel.
It's been a long day. Let's journey into night.
Let's do it. In 3D?
In 3D.
电影和记忆最大的区别就是，电影肯定是假的，而记忆分不出真假，它随时浮现在眼前。
You were not a huge fan of A Long Day's Journey into Night, directed by Bygone. Is that correct?
That's a safe way to put it. That is an accurate way to put it. I am not a huge fan of this film. I do find it very rich for discussion, though, and we're about to find out if that's a true statement that I just made.
Let's do it. I was bowled over by it. I was very excited. It very much lived up to my expectations. This is just like exactly my kind of movie.
That is exactly what I was thinking while I was watching it. Mm-hmm. Like, this is Michael's catnip.
Yeah.
This is, our great grandmother's Coca-Cola, also known as cocaine soda.
Yeah. I have an ever-changing and rotating list of favorites on Letterboxd. That's like 100 films. But then I also have another list that's just called like epitomes of my taste.
Oh, I thought you meant your top 4.
Oh, no. Well, that too. But I have,
Mine
a list.
Mine never change.
I know, you stick to the brand. I like that. But I additionally,
what you get with me.
Yeah, exactly. I additionally have one that's just like epitomes of my taste, like the kind of thing. Like if I had to pick one kind of thing in cinema that I just really gravitate to, it's something.
Is it Tom Cruise films in the 90s and early 2000s?
Mission Impossible 2. Yeah,
I like that. I also mean like Minority Report. The good stuff.
Yeah, the ones I have in there are like David Lynch's Mulholland Drive, Kieslowski's The Double Life of Veronique, Terrence Davies.
Is it Veronique or is it Veronique?
You are probably correct. I don't know.
No, I'm just asking because I thought it was a French film and I thought that the E's were like announced like that.
It's entirely possible.
All right, let's
don't
get
take
out
my
of
word
esoteric
for it.
area and back into reality.
But anyways, what I responded to in Long Day's Journey into Night that I think it kind of has in common with those films is sort of fractured storytelling, an elliptical kind of narrative. That
Are you saying there was a visual metaphor that set you up for this fractured storytelling?
A little bit.
Was it like a fractured mirror?
Doesn't hurt.
No, it's very clearly what you're saying it is.
Yeah.
And it is exactly what you respond to and love.
And I feel it dealing with things that cinema as an audiovisual medium is particularly well equipped to explore, which is things like dreams and memory, these sort of things that are difficult to really put your hands around that movies can recreate the feeling of.
Should we start with the marrow first, just out of the gate? I'll ask you a question. Is the 3D sequence real or a dream?
I think it is a flattening of dreams, reality, and memory. I think it is sort of a fusion of the three for me.
Do you know about the film Jacob's Ladder?
I know of it. Yes.
Okay.
Were you talking about a movie in your review?
Yes.
Oh, okay. For listeners, you had referenced Jacob's Ladder in your review. I thought maybe you just meant like the concept of a Jacob's Ladder.
It's definitely, the film is about that as well.
Makes
I've
sense.
actually never seen the film. There's a film podcast called How Did This Get Made? From Paul Scheer. And he always has Jason Mantzoukas and his wife, June Diane Raphael, on there. And Jason Mantzoukas always makes this joke, is it a Jacob's Ladder scenario? And the conceit of this Jacob's Ladder scenario appears to be that the whole film is about this man who is dying, and it's like it's like his dream thoughts and life experiences and imaginings as he's dying.
Got it.
And I question whether or not, because we put on our 3D glasses in this theater, and that assassination was to happen in the theater, whether or not we are watching the person who was getting assassinated in the theater.
Oh, interesting. But I thought it was our main character who was carrying out the assassination.
That's where it's like, I don't know if he's killing himself.
Oh, got it.
I don't know how dreamlike this thing gets.
Got it.
Because when it started, I had said that it feels kind of like Murakami. And I mean, it uses a lot of the tropes of Murakami, a lot of the illusions of Murakami, but Murakami, by the end, normally makes a clear statement about who his characters are. And I don't feel like I got to there with this, personally. Maybe other people had that experience. I did not.
Yeah, I did not feel like that was the goal, or that was not what I was feeling myself trying to do. It was just understand perfectly who this guy was. It's partly, to me, in a way, it's just sort of like this supreme aesthetic experience of what it feels like to remember things, and how your memory can kind of feel like a prison that you both can't escape but also don't want to leave, in a way. I love that metaphor during the long take. I love how evocative it is of noir and everything that I love about noir, right? Like that this film can kind of feel like this ultra art house Tarkovsky slow cinema, and also make me think of Hitchcock's Vertigo, with the use of the double, the lookalike, like how that's like one of the defining kind of noir tropes. So you
thought she was lookalike?
Well, it's yeah, I think so.
I don't think I bought it.
No. Okay, fair enough.
Because if it's a dream, then it's just a representation of that girl, and it's his subconscious telling him that it's not her.
Yeah.
I can't follow the turtles all the way down in this one.
Yeah, I don't think that's what this kind of cinema is about for me, is trying to figure it out. I do not feel like it is a puzzle movie where people should be trying to dissect what everything means. It's about what it feels like.
So this is your holy motors.
Yeah, probably. I think this kind of experience can be very personal, and that one clicked for you.
What you're saying makes a lot of sense to me. It's just as I was watching it, I didn't feel like I could map my emotions onto it. I honestly don't feel like I have time. I think that's my thing with these Chinese films, is that I'm trying to watch it, I'm trying to read it, and I'm trying to map myself into it. And I just don't find enough time for that third thing to happen, I think.
You want it slower?
It's not that I want it slower. It's that
I want to be faster.
when I watch these. I want to watch these better. I want to be more tuned into these. Like next time we watch 3 Chinese films, I want to watch some Chinese TV or limited series, and I want to be prepped and ready for the experience. Because I feel like I'm like at fault because everyone's loving these movies and I'm just not there.
Yeah, but I don't think of myself, like, I don't approach this movie first and foremost as a Chinese movie. Like, I don't know that that's the right... I don't want... There's no right way.
It's not just a Chinese movie.
Yeah.
But I think that the fact that it is a Chinese movie, and I seem to have trouble with this language of film, that maybe I have some homework that I need to do.
Yeah. It's a possibility. I mean, for me, there was just relatable stuff. A guy returning to his hometown for his dad's funeral. He has all these memories that he's working through. The murder of his best friend, him returning to this memory of the girl he fell in love with.
The broken clock, the photograph in the broken clock, the broken watch, the firework, the meaning of eternity, the meaning of transition. It was all a little bit pretentious for me.
Oh, I hate that word. Oh, it's the worst.
I do too, because there's a lot of pretentious shit that I love, dude.
Like what?
Mother. Right? That's like the first thing to think of. But you get Blade Runner, I don't know.
You call them pretentious?
People would.
But...
I'd say large swaths of general population would. And this is just one of those things where when I was watching it, I was like, this is a little bit like you're leaning on what I think of as like pretentious storytelling. Like you're using these things in new ways. Like it just wasn't fresh to me. I guess is my main complaint. Like I didn't feel like anything was too original. It was just steeped in old tropes, keystones of epic narratives from the last 2,000 years, right? Like there's stuff from Beowulf, there's stuff from the Iliad, there's stuff from what's his name, Dostoevsky. Like if you go to the big storytellers, like he's using all that stuff, and I feel like he's using it the same way, not really in this fresh sense, right? Like you knew that you were encountering this version of the Minotaur when he wakes up and opens the thing, and the little boy walks out with the
mask
bull
on,
skull on,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like it's using all these things that I'm very familiar with, and I don't feel like it's using them in a non-familiar way. And I don't know, it just lacked a certain originality in its narrative for me. But the originality was on point in its cinematography and visual appeal.
Completely understood what you experienced. Could not feel differently. Total 100% the other direction. It felt 100% fresh to me. It was reminiscent to me of some of like what I already said, just the kinds of films that I loved the most. I could spend all day thinking just how exactly the films this guy has seen in that dirty movie theater has shaped who he is, and the extent to which the cinema he has seen has sort of perpetuated the ideal that he has for this woman as she sits in his memory. How it might cultivate some of the shittier behavior that he does exhibit to her. How cinema can both sort of function as a respite from despair if he's feeling that, and at the same time be the thing that sort of fills you with longing for a particular thing in the first place.
Did you get the sense that he might be the same character as Wildcat?
That did kind of cross my mind, but I don't know that I really landed there. Did you?
Okay. Yeah, it felt very Hermann Hesse wrote what I think is one of the greatest works in like the Western canon. It's called Demian, and I guess I don't want to spoil it for potential readers of it, but it's essentially a story very much like this, where you don't know if these separately named boys are separate boys, or not until the end. And I definitely got the sense from this that it was leaning into that in a way that just generally didn't work for me. I don't
know that
the story didn't work.
It crossed my mind, but we do like see Wildcat as his own person.
But it's in a dreamscape. It's unreliable.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as transit to me. Like, just because we're being told something doesn't mean that thing's going to come true, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's fair. I mean, it's difficult to argue.
Like you said, it's a flattening of reality and dreams and everything. Yeah. I would agree, because I would specifically agree with that way of looking at the film, although that wasn't my experience, based on like the cover of the film looking very much like that. Yeah.
I mean, I prefer something that emphasizes like mood, atmosphere, and evocative quality over narrative clarity, to be honest. I go to the cinema first and foremost to feel something, to just luxuriate in the quality that the images can give me. And whether I perfectly understand these characters is besides the point, because I feel something either way. It's the kind of movie, it's interesting that it is so critically acclaimed, because I always find that these kinds of movies are challenging for critics sometimes, because it's kind of easy for a critic to dissect a piece that follows somewhat of a more literary convention in a way, when you're just kind of like talking about it in the context of like a hero's journey or something like that. I think
which is very much what this is.
I disagree.
What?
Yeah, for sure.
Really? Okay.
I don't, I mean, it might allude to that, but I don't think that this is that is not where the appeal here is really coming from. I think it's more about the sensual experience of it that I find just incredibly tantalizing.
Okay.
I just look at you and I'm like, respond. That's not even a question.
So, true or false, he exits the movie theater by an up and down thingy on a train track.
The most overt stalker reference.
Okay,
yeah.
Right. And then happens to be in a labyrinth that he can't get out of, which we see illustrated on the ping pong table that leads to his release. He unleashes the Minotaur, who releases him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then he descends into the darkness, which is a locked town.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's not a hero's journey.
Okay, that's fine. I'll swallow my words. Would you say that is this film's really concerned with perfectly executing the hero's journey? Like, I don't.
No, I think that
it can allude to that. It can maybe like refer to that.
I think it's reliance on omens, narrative keystones, and tropes do end up giving it a opaque at like I'll give you that it's maybe an opaque hero's journey, especially based on how it ends. But I do think that it definitely mirrors the hero's journey throughout it as a piece, and it is definitely a dream film, though, so it does not make clear assertions about what this hero's journey is. But I do feel like it has this classical hero's journey narrative trait to it, and I would agree that it is the sensuality of the lens, of the long takes, of the just beautiful gloss to this camera that gives it the artistry that makes me completely mixed on it. Like, I totally get loving it. I totally get loving Burning. But I also get why Labuza rated it lower than me, because it just feels hollow, and it feels like an artifice of something built on something that is empty to me, based on my experiences with narrative and how this feels like it is an empty narrative based on shells of characters. But I do understand how other people might be filling those empty shells with themselves or getting something else different from it, and I understand where that beauty can be found. But I also think that I think that this is one of those things where, like, if someone gives it a 0 or a 5, I totally get it and understand where you're coming from. And I think that's the benefit of me giving it a 2.5, is like, I'm not in either camp, and I totally see the merits of both camps.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't know where to go from there.
Let's talk about the visual repetition of the female behind that shape of the grate in the fence. So he has a conversation with his mom's friend in the prison.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha.
Right?
I had to think for a second what you were talking about.
So there's the glass, and then there's that kind of a hexagonal shape of wiring in the glass, right?
Yeah.
Then at the end, after she exits to the other side of the gate, that gate is the same hexagonal pattern.
Yeah.
Interesting symbology there, right? Visual symbology about these people that he's emotionally tied to, and right, one is out of the dream, one is in the dream, and so he's maybe coming to terms with the fact that he has to let go.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Love that. Yeah, the scene in the jail took me, like, I almost had to, like, adjust my eyes during that scene because of how the background in that shot ultimately seemed to take on, some kind of movement to it.
Yes.
Which was fantastic. I mean, just water itself as a motif throughout the entire thing, and how often I almost felt like tears and rainfall could be interchangeable. The way, the water damaged houses, the first shot within the first 10 minutes of us kind of tracking alongside like a rusted piece of machinery or something like that, for me was sort of this like representation of how water can change the shape of a material thing with time. Your memory can change shape and morph.
Definitely. If you think about the ground in that room where the water was dripping, it did show erosion of the drips in the floor.
Yeah. I think the color's great. It's not, real ostentatious neon. I know the color is not as much of a thing, but
it certainly is not.
Yeah.
But what was its overall color?
Well,
Did it have one? Did the dream
he's...
sequence have a separate one from the live action? Give me the breakdown.
That's what's difficult, is that...
Tell me the deets.
As we talked about a little bit already, I personally just could have done without the 3D, particularly because the movie's already dim enough, and that only dims it more. Well,
maybe we should say, like, in a bunch of reviews that I read, it said that most theaters in North America are not equipped to even project this film. So there's a chance that version we watched is like those versions where like it was much dimmer than it should be. Because I had a significantly hard time making out images in a number of scenes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's like the colorblind thing or if like that was universal.
It was dim for sure. It didn't detract from the experience for me a whole lot, but throughout most of that long take when he's sort of just drifting throughout this town square, it's a dark scene, but there are sort of these punctuations of neon, tube lighting and the hanging of lights kind of around the stage. I just visually just gorgeous for me. I really like the feel of it, and really still totally natural. That long take did not ever feel ostentatious for me. I just was sort of.
Did you ever feel like you were feeling the mechanics of it?
100%. Yeah.
Me too. And that didn't ruin it, which I was surprised by.
Yeah. I haven't done a lot of reading about the film yet. I did hear one interview with him, and he does a really long take in his first film too, Kylie Blues, and that one's even like a little rougher. But he talks a little bit about how he's just more interested in the quality of continuity than like technical perfection. You know, I can kind of understand how if the camera does move this way or that way, that in some it doesn't make a whole lot of difference for me. And I think it does really contribute to the dreaminess of it. Yeah, I mean, I thought most of it was gorgeous. The performances themselves is kind of hard to like chew on them. I almost just think about like these people more in terms of like the presence they have on screen rather than like the mechanics of their performance. I didn't get there. Yeah,
might be a separation for us.
Yeah. I just very much felt the way in which she, you know, feels both kind of distant and close to him depending on the scene.
The way you're describing this sounds just like how I felt about Holy Motors, which is really interesting to me.
Just a flip-flop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like I wasn't watching the mechanics of Eva Mendes. I was watching like what she represents, like mythologically within this context of what was being evoked in that sewer scene and like the eating of the hair and everything.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that I wish that I would have been able to do that. I wish I would have latched onto these characters as symbologies more than actors. But they did. I did just kind of have a barrier where I felt like they were an actor. Definitely, the second time we encounter her and she's got the leather jacket on, that definitely helped me kind of allegorize her more rather than view her as a performer. But I still had that wall up where she felt like a performer to me. Her performance did not exactly work for me throughout.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really know how wide of a release art house wise this is getting, but I'm kind of curious to know if the selling point of a 50-minute 3D long take is going to bring people in hoping for something a bit more energetic than what it is.
That's what I was I thought we were going to get some violence.
Yeah.
I thought like 3D 50 minutes, like, okay, last time we watched a great long take, it was an Outlaw King. I'm ready.
Yeah.
And I did not get what I booked my ticket for, but what I got, I'm really happy I interacted with, just like Black Mother. So it's hard to say.
Yeah, I do fear that's it's a difficult movie to market, and I kind of wonder if they're maybe if they're relying on that a little bit too much. I think I would still be cautious about who I recommend it to, and not use that as the selling point. And someone's gonna go, "Oh, that sounds so dope," and I'll be like, "Well, it's pretty meditative."
You've seen Tarkovsky. Imagine 50 minutes.
Yeah, precisely.
So it sounds like we're maybe ramping down. Let's, if there is a conversation to be had about how this might reflect on bigger China, maybe right here. Did you have any themes that you felt like it was digging into that were about its nation?
I really do not, to be honest. I did not think about it in those terms. What about you?
I think the biggest ones that are very easy and, you know, very cheap.
Oh, I'm so stupid.
Like it's cheap. Like what I'm doing is cheap. It might not be in good faith or earnest, but I do think that there is at least a reach to be made about the sparkler and the watch, right? Transition and eternity, and how he descends into this place that is walled off. You're not allowed to get through, and if you want to get through the gate, you basically have to hold a gun to someone's head. And I do think that there could be a statement being made about what it's like to be in China right now. You are in a walled garden. There is a gate to get out, but you basically have to kill someone to get through. And is it really that much better on the other side? No. You know, on one side there's pool and there's this Chinese karaoke. It's very much reminiscent of K-pop. There's food, there's sparklers, there's all this same stuff. Bread and circuses, right? But on that gate, there's opportunity, there's freedom. And I do think that it does. I think there's a case to be made that it might be exploring those motifs, or that those motifs might be permeating China because of the nature of that nation state at the moment.
Yep. Let's leave it at that. Well said.
on to An Elephant Sitting Still, which we will record next week.
Gotta sit through it first.
That will be an elephant, and I will not sit still.
满洲里动物园有只大象，它他妈整天就坐着，也可能它就喜欢坐着。
Well, that's good.
That is good.
Drinking a Northwest Pilsner today.
Even though we're still on the same day. Totally.
100%.
Last time we recorded those Chinese films.
Still comfortably on the couch.
This is a nice Northwest Pilsner. You are relaxing. You've chosen to stand up for yourself by sitting down.
As I do.
And all of this is going to get cut. So that I can expedite our conversation about an elephant sitting still.
That's right.
Hubo.
Hubo.
Also known as Woo Boy.
This is a big movie.
It is.
It's a real big movie. This was one of my most anticipated movies of the year.
It was.
Also one of the most daunting.
It certainly was that to me.
Yeah. At the time, I really didn't know that much about, like, the content of the story. I just, like, had seen positive stuff, seen people really respond to it. Knew the
story
fact
of
his
suicide.
Yeah. But otherwise, I just knew that it was, like, practically 4 hours and thought it sounded like a gauntlet. I ultimately did not feel like it was that. Like, I could honestly say that there were other movies this year that felt longer to me. Like, I actually thought it was like it had a real sense of movement for me. It was not the brutal thing I thought it might be. What about you?
I 100% agree. I actually was thinking about this earlier before you came over, and I was thinking The Wild Pear Tree felt longer to me. It's about 30 minutes shorter than this runtime, but there's moments in The Wild Pear Tree that just really, you feel the seams kind of break, and his budget as a filmmaker, and kind of just how daunting of a project that was. And something about Hubo's style is just so effortless and so seamed together. And for some reason, like, these long lingering shots don't exhaust me the way that what was the film that you just rewatched this week with Gabby?
Long Day's Journey into Night.
Yeah, for some reason that movie just exhausted me, like, completely. Even though it was dazzling to watch these long takes, I didn't feel like it was rich so much as, like, a superfluous performance piece. Like, look at what I can do with the camera and how we cannot ever cut. Like, it is very cool. But he does some very long shots in here, and I feel like all of them are honest. And they're not just there to be... I don't feel like any of them are there to be cool. They're just there because that's the way that he sees the story. Maybe. Yeah.
For me, it did, in one sense, give it somewhat of a kind of episodic feel. Like, each take kind of feels like the next sort of small chapter in this giant novel of a movie.
Agreed. Yeah. Novel.
Totally. It just feels big because it is big in runtime. But yeah, I mean, I feel like each of those long takes make it that much more clear how sort of, like, enduring this feeling of, like, complete despair is for these people. Like, if it was cut, that would sort of provide some relief each time. It gives it that sense of this being a feeling that is not going away. It is continuous, which makes it very hard, but very beautiful at the same time. Yeah, I would be cautious about who I recommend it to, because I kind of feel like if you don't like any, like, one 30-minute segment of this movie, you're probably not going to like the next 30-minute segment and the one following it, because there is sort of, like, a pretty stable mood to it, and that's exactly what I like about it. But like, it is a pretty relentless exercise in pain, I guess.
It's a weird movie to talk about, but it's a weird sentence you just said. Like, if you don't like any 30-minute segment, you're not going to like it. And, like, I totally know what you mean and agree with you. And then I think on Letterboxd, I put the heart. I gave it 4 stars. The heart means like according to their formula. I don't think I liked any 30-minute segment in totality. I liked moments of the 30 minutes, maybe. Like, I definitely did like moments, but, like, I almost think that, like, because it's so nihilistic, you just can't use normal words of expression. And I don't think that you're wrong. I just think that, like, a movie like this begins to break down how we can communicate. Because it's like, can you really like hearing a dog get kicked while it's murdering another dog?
Yeah.
Well, okay, can you like a boy getting pushed down the stairs? Can you like a man being shot in the leg? Like...
You don't like it.
No. Exactly. So there is a weird nihilistic breakdown that Hubo communicates to us. And it's something like the suffocation of the society itself. Like, we're going to talk about camp later, but one of the things in camp, specifically in a film called Welcome to the Dollhouse, is she begins running into these metaphorical fences, and then she runs into a literal fence. It's one of my favorite moments in the film. And this has something like that, where every time these people reach out to other people, they either go deeper in this pit of running away, or they're pushed away.
Yeah.
And we see that with the old man and his family moving him to the home. Mm-hmm. We see that they need to do that in order to get their daughter into an apartment in a school district that will work. We see the school district not handling these children and moving to, like, it's incorporating 2 schools together. It's all like this slow moving pressure of death. Yeah, it feels like.
Yeah. Which all sounds terrible, right?
But it's very elegant and very beautiful to watch, and has a just awesome score. I really liked the music in this one.
Yeah. It's more for me about not just the immediate pleasure of it, but more about, like, the authorial expressiveness and just the satisfaction of being sort of enveloped in an artist's view of the world.
Do we know? Do you know if Hubo was the DP as well as the director?
That I don't know. That is a good question, because there is some fantastic camera work,
and it's a very reactive type of camera work. You're watching a character in close up sometimes lean forward out of frame, and the camera will catch up, and then he'll lean backwards out of the frame, and the camera will go back up. So it's honestly, I just kept thinking Guy Ritchie the whole time I watched it. It's just very handheld, super sharp, super clean, 2/3 rules, character in the center. Depth of frame is very shadow ridden. I kept thinking of Guy Ritchie, and I kept thinking, like, how that London industrial style, when you think of, like, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, or even Trainspotting with Danny Boyle, is very much what you're seeing in this movie. Like, it's a very industrial style, like, high concept lo-fi film.
Yeah. For me, when I think about long takes, when they sometimes just feel like too much a work of kind of preparation in a way, like Birdman. I personally did not care for Birdman, and it was something about how sort of not spontaneous those long takes or in that case it's like, the illusion of a, I think, single take the whole movie, right? Whereas here everything feels super spontaneous, even though you kind of have to think that there was planning behind each of these shots.
Oh man, when they're in the cafe and the dude runs up and slaps that paper on the window.
Oh yeah.
And do you realize, like, how long you've been in that scene in the cafe, and that you cut there right after, like, the boy was watching her in the cat, like,
oh yeah,
it's just these long lingering takes are all tied together, and, like, I don't know about you, but I just stopped noticing that there were long takes even. Like, I didn't have time to measure because I was just trying to make sense of the world.
Yeah. You're more just kind of being bowled over by it than you are sitting there impressed by it.
Yeah.
I feel that too, but I feel that more in hindsight. In the moment, I'm just in it. He did not shoot it himself. He did edit it, however.
Okay.
Which is interesting.
Cinematography was Chow Fan.
That's right.
Well, I'm a fan of Fan.
Agreed.
I would like to see what else he does.
Yeah.
I found a way into Chinese cinema finally. I just took existential nihilism.
Yeah.
And an examination of post-industrial culture in China.
Yeah.
And Amanda commits suicide. So maybe it wasn't worth it after all.
Yeah. It is it's a heck of a movie. Big. I mean, just to think that it's a debut, like, that's just crazy. That for a first movie, I mean, somebody would be wanting to make something this just massive and committed. Like, that's why it works is that it, like, it does just feel so committed to immersing you in this particular understanding of the world, which is just so defined by hopelessness. Like movies just so often are not willing to do that. And I think I do see, like, a fleck of hope in that final shot. I don't know if you do or not.
We're talking about the elephant making its sounds.
Yeah, exactly. That's the scene I'm talking about.
After everyone gets off the bus and the little girl is kicking the rocks.
They're kicking the rocks. I thought they were playing, like, hacky sack too. Or maybe it was just with a rock. But I was like, oh my god, like, this is the only time in this entire movie that I think I've seen someone do something for fun. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just the, like, human instinct to look for it, right? You don't want the movie to end without it. So maybe it's just the desire to find it there. I think I felt it in that final shot. But what about you? Did it not?
I mean, there's definitely a triumphant sort of vibe to the fact that they made it on the, like, the train was a dead end. They got on the bus. They made it to their halfway point, and they hurt, right, because it doesn't take them all the way to Manjuli.
Yeah.
It dropped them off at a town that starts with, or a region or province that starts with S, I believe, and we hear the elephant far away, and yeah, there's these people kicking rocks, and there is a certain triumphantness to them doing something and not being told no.
Yeah.
That is very much earned by the runtime and how much they're told no and how much they're pushed away and fenced in and in all these ways.
Yeah.
Do you want to maybe dig into like contemporary, like, just, we were talking about a movie and you were talking about how we were talking about Richard Linklater's movie that's from the Philip K. Dick book, A Scanner Darkly, and how contemporary news was kind of in making that a deeper and richer text, right? This very week, Alibaba's head came out in support of the 996 work schedule they have, 6 days a week, 9 to 9, and said that it's a gift for them to be able to work these, I think it's 60-hour work weeks. Or maybe it's 80-hour work weeks, and how that's a gift and a blessing. And the Chinese people trying to say, like, no, trying to do their impression of unionizing. And Alibaba saying, no, you're very, very lucky. And, like, there is a system of oppression that existed in Mao's China that is now, that version's gone, but there's the new version where the state-run capital structure is somewhere between socialism, because every company, if it wants to succeed, essentially has to operate for the state's good. And then the state regulates what they're allowed to do, what they're allowed to see, and they have to basically have complete rights. In order for Google to go in there, they had to surrender all of the user infrastructure. I believe I just saw Amazon's pulling out its fulfillment centers in China. So this is very much a place that controls itself, and it is hemmed, like, it has its social fences, and keeps people in place, and there's only so much room at the top, it seems like, and so there's a consequence down. And I think that this film maybe expresses Hubo and the people that he grew up with, maybe how they feel in this structure of a country that's, by all accounts, on the world stage doing just things that we didn't think were possible in the 1980s to bring its people out of poverty. But the cost of that, the day-to-day life of that, is so meaningless for some of these people, and so helpless or hopeless, that there is a lack of freedom to be found for them, that they turn towards existential nihilism, and many of them suicide. We heard about the suicides in the nets that they had to put in for the iPhone screens.
I forget what that company's called.
We've heard about this in culture so much, about the Chinese culture, and I think that this is very much that cry of like, this is what it felt like to me to be here.
All 110% valid points. Not much to add, only because I think I personally just came at it from like a more like lens of humanity rather than like a cultural lens, just personally. I think that's all 100% there. But I don't know. There were the angles I kept finding myself kind of looking at it from were things that I kind of just felt like were crossing cultural boundaries, I guess. Thinking about things like early on when there's the like vice principal of the school we meet in that dark room a couple times, and I don't remember if it's one of the main characters or a side character who walks in to his room kind of off screen, and we hear him slip on a banana peel that he had tossed down. And I remember thinking to myself, like, being a little nervous after watching that and think like, is this gonna be 4 hours of like that kind of thing? And like not being sure if I was really gonna respond to that kind of thing.
That was kind of like an Exterminating Angel moment, wasn't it?
It was.
Like it almost broke into surrealism and like this macabre world.
Yeah, it surprised me. But I don't know, once I was just so enveloped by this feeling that is so dense throughout the entire feeling, I looked back on that as indicating the worldview of this film being partly about how to these people life just feels like a cosmic joke, and that is all 100% influenced by culture, but something that people everywhere might deal with. Just the struggle to find meaning in life.
Intrinsic value, which is something that's a worldwide phenomenon right now. There's as we move towards automation, artificial intelligence, or automated intelligence, robots doing menial jobs, call centers being taken over by robots, truck drivers, only needing to oversee an automated truck leader. We are going to no longer be able to measure ourselves by, hi, my name is, and then have someone say, what do you do? That will no longer be the same thing. We already know that GDP is a bad measure of wealth. And I think that what we see in this film is Hubo, maybe not overtly, but definitely reckoning with that idea of, like, do humans have intrinsic value? And can a human have an intrinsic value in a system ran like China's social system is ran, where everything is for the state, and if there's an alley you can sweep for the state, they demand you sweep it, and if they pay you, they might just put you in prison if you don't. And how these social structures work. We know that they've incorporated that digital thing from Nosedive, the Black Mirror episode with Bryce Dallas Howard, where there's the social rating system.
I have seen that, actually.
Where you can rate people now. And I don't know how wide the rollout is, but just imagine being someone as free-thinking as Hubo comes off in this film, and just, being surrounded by these people that are going to measure how you behave. Like that is just someone that has negative thoughts or anxieties, like worst nightmares, people watching you and judging how you behave constantly and just being overseen and judged. Yeah. And I feel like that might be really the way that the world is beginning to shift. And I think that this is a larger reflection of global capitalism and it's the fallout of it as we move towards automation and people move their intrinsic value away from, hi, my name is, and I work at, to, you know, like, what do you do? Like, with your time, are you creative? What do you like? What do you know about? You know, we have to move towards these intrinsic values, and we have to see if systems will allow us to have these intrinsic values. Yeah.
I thought a little bit about, like, Antonioni's movies and you know, a movie like La Notte, which is one of my favorite movies, but like, you know, the ultra simple like thesis of that is something about like modernity being alienating, but here it's like modernity is like despair fueling. Like it's just that to like the you know, nth degree, right? And I appreciate it willing to go to that length because I just believe the feeling in it. I don't ever feel like any of it was really a put on, you know? Yeah, it's a lot there.
Just before we go, I guess. So the destination they're trying to get to is in northern China. It's called Manzhouli, or Manzhouli. There is an elephant in a zoo there, so the film says. Mm-hmm. There is no zoo in Manzhouli, according to all my Google searches.
False.
And just some stuff to know about it. It's in the inner province of Mongolia in China, on the northern border of Russia, and it's a port city. So people that are going into Russia would go through this city. It's a city of I think 250,000. And it has like some just beautiful architecture, but I think that there's something to be said for, you know, the old ideas of like there's freedom to be found or meaning to be found in the north, or you know, this idea of moving away from people that can tell us no and confine our existence to this idea of going towards the tundra, because northern China, especially northern Mongolia, is, you know, bordering on the Siberian peninsula, if I remember correctly, which is just a strait of wasteland, essentially. It's kind of like going to the Dakotas in the winter. Like, you just don't go there.
Yeah, I think one of the opening shots, or one of the shots in that opening montage is of sort of like a blanket of snow, which you never actually see.
Yes.
As if they've already reached it or something like that, whatever you want to make of it.
Or the cover art of the film has the silhouette of the elephant, which we never see.
Yeah.
And then the other thing about Manzhouli is it used to be an industrial town, and it's been depopulating since, I think, the late 1990s, ever since they've been moving towards their technology infrastructure, which I think is being run out of like South and Southwest China.
Interesting.
So there is a from what I can tell, there's something that I don't understand because I'm not culturally Chinese and I don't know the background, that is super rich about what he's communicating about the towns they're in, why they're leaving, and where it is that they want to get to.
Oh yeah, 100%. I thought for sure after I watched it I'd never want to do it again, but like just to like come at it from those angles, I think I would probably do it a second time, and I think I would find just as much there.
Yeah, I'm not really daunted by watching it again. Now that I've been through it once, it's like, no biggie.
No biggie. Yeah.
Contrary to its name, it was not an elephant to sit still through this one.
There you go. We did it.